Hi everybody, I thought I'd put together a little compilation of some easy step-by-steps for beginners. So it's going to give you a chance to do a few all together. So I hope you enjoy them.
Hi everyone, I'm back with my beginners series, which is progressing very nicely. I'm going to show you a little sort of Lake District scene today. And we're going to use a new technique on the water, which is clean film. So I have got, this is Saunders Waterford, which is down to 8th Imperial now. So I've taken a 1/4 Imperial sheet and I've tore it down to make 4 little postcardy size pieces, so it's still nice and small. I'm using a round number 10 and a round number 6 and my Cotman pans. So I'm going to use 3 colours today. We're going to keep it nice and limited: ultramarine blue, cadmium red and cadmium yellow, and I'm going to show you how to make the colours that we need as we go along. So I'm going to get a sky in first of all. So then I'm going to take some water in. We're going to go just under halfway. Make sure that there's no dry bits on that sky and that you've got plenty of water on. This is my round number 10. Loading with water and then dipping into the ultramarine blue. And have a nice cloudy sky. Circular motion, holding the brush down as I go. You get a really nice cloudy effect. I'm still using my round number 10. You want to use the biggest brush you can for the job. Give my brush a little bit of a rinse. I'm just going to come into a tiny bit of the cadmium red. I'm just going to take that in places and blend. So if I go at the top here, it's going to make a nice sort of muted purple into the sky. And a little bit in there. And then I'm going to leave a gap and let that settle. I'm going to put some water in. So again, round number 10. Coming all the way across, checking I've got plenty of water on. And then I'm going to do some horizontal strokes. So this is the ultramarine blue again. And then I'm going to dip into the cadmium red. Take some of that through. I'm going to get a little bit of clean film. I'm going to stretch it across the water at the bottom. So you don't want to lay it on too tight, but I'm going to stretch. So we're going to get some nice ripple effects. And then I'm going to let that one dry. Okay, so I've left that to dry and then I've peeled the clean film away and I've got this lovely texture that's appeared. So it's a really nice way to create some interesting water. So what I'm going to do now is just pop a couple of mountains in. So I'm going to come over the sky. So this is my round number 10. Pop in a little bit of water. And with my round number 6, I'm going to bring on some yellow. So this is a cadmium yellow. And then a little bit of the blue, follow the line of the land. You should get a nice green appearing. Take a little bit of the blue just into a palette and a dab to make the green and a dab of the red to give a browny green. I can then pop in a few trees. I'm just going to pop them along the edge. Vary the height while it's nice and wet. You get a few trees appearing here. Okay, so I'm going to dry that off. And that one's dry. I'm going to pop a slightly bigger one in this side. So this is round number 10. I'm coming on to the cadmium yellow again. So a little bit of water. Cadmium yellow. I'm going to come into the cadmium red, just stroke that down, leave little bits of the yellow still showing. Number 6, I can come into the blue. I'm just going to blend that down, following the line of the land. I want a little bit of a tree. I can use that same green, add a little bit more blue, and I can pop in a few trees like that. So I'll dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry. I've got some really lovely soft trees. What I'll do is I'll bring something in the foreground here. So this is round number 10 with a bit of water, and then I'm going to come in with some cadmium yellow, cadmium red, some of the ultramarine blue. So I want this to be darker because it is in the foreground. If I dip back into the yellow, I can make it greener coming through. With my round number 6 and a little bit of the cadmium yellow, I can bring in a few grasses. And just dip back into the blue. If you wanted to use a finer brush, you could do. That's given a little bit of a foreground there. With that green that we made earlier, just make sure I've got plenty of it, I can come back in and work in some hard trees. So this is with a round number 6. Just bring... You've still got the soft ones behind, but just bring in some harder ones. So that one will set that one back a little bit more. Okay, I'll dry that off and then we'll just put some reflections in. So this works really well without really doing much else to it, but we are going to pop a few reflections in. I'm coming in to dry with a bit of that green that's still on my round number 6. Just working in an extra bit of grassy detail. Just little strokes with the brush just into the foreground here. If I take a little bit of cadmium yellow onto my round number 6 and I'm coming on to dry, there's still a hint of green on here, which is absolutely fine. And then I've cleaned my brush off, dried it off, and I'm just going to break through with a few strokes. So this is still damp. It's quite still water, so we don't need much of a reflection. And then I'm going to come this side. So this is a cadmium yellow coming on with my round number 6. A little bit of the cadmium red. A little bit of the ultramarine blue. And then I've cleaned my brush off, I've dried it off on the kitchen towel. I'm going to do the same, which is just break through horizontal strokes. Just so you just break that reflection onto the surface of the water a little bit. I just need a little bit more of that green. This is still damp enough to take it. I'm going to do a reflection of these trees just at the front. Can pop a little bit of something in here to just reflect these trees as well. So that's the green. Rinse my brush off. Just with a slightly damp brush, I'm just going to bring that through, because this is dried a little bit this side, just so you're getting that reflection there as well. Okay, I'll dry this one off and take the tape off. And there we go, that's all finished. The taped border really does make a difference. It really sets off the picture, even the simplest of pictures. So you've learnt a little bit about doing reflections, some wet in wet, some wet on dry, and a new technique for water there. If you've enjoyed this video, I'll pop the playlist for the absolute beginners here and another video here for you to have a look at. Please do like, subscribe and share, and I'll see you next time. Hi and welcome back to my beginners series, or welcome if you're new to my beginners series. What I'm doing is a session of tutorials, a series of tutorials which goes through how to do different techniques simply and quickly using watercolour. So today I've got an 8th imperial size piece of paper. So I've taken a 1/4 imperial sheet and ripped it down into 4 pieces. So it's a nice manageable size. I've also taped it so it's keeping it steady, and it's going to give it a nice border. This is a cotton paper, Saunders Waterford. It's a rough paper, £140. I've also got some Cotman watercolour paints, and I'm going to use a selection of brushes. I've got a round number 10, a round number 6 and a rigger size number 2. I'll talk to you about the colours as we go through the picture. So I'm going to cover the whole thing with water. I'm going to go nice and loose today. So I'm using my round number 10. And I'm going to get 2 layers of water onto here. The cotton paper will take quite a lot. It's nice and shiny, so you know that there's no dry bits. You don't want any puddles though either. So I'm using the colours I have. If you don't have these colours, then just use the nearest equivalent that you've got. This is a standard starter palette. So I have got here cerulean blue. I'm going to take that in, start to create a nice sky. Wisping left to right, basically, straight across. I'm not having any cloud today. This is still with my round number 10. I'm going to dip into some cadmium red, just straight onto the brush, and bring that in. It's just going to give it a nice depth at the top, a bit of a grey purple. Just blending it through on the paper. I've not rinsed my brush in between. I'm dipping into some sap green. I'm going to bring this down, so this is going to be sort of a distant field. There's very little water on my brush, so you can dip into the paint stays quite neat and it doesn't really move that much, whereas if you're flat, it won't move that much. Okay, then I have got, I'm going to dip in a little bit here, some Viridian green. So this often comes in starter palettes and it's very, very bright. And the way to change it is to take in some brown or some red, because red and green are complementary colours and it will make it a much more natural green. So what I'm going to do with that is start to bring that in at the bottom. So I'm still with this same brush, this same round number 10. And I'm just creating some foreground foliage. Now I don't want to eliminate all of the green behind, I want to keep that there. I'm going to rinse this brush off. I've got a little bit of kitchen towel here. I tend to dab off a little bit on kitchen towel. I'm going to pick up my round number 6. I'm going to come into some burnt umber. So I'm just stroking through, creating a higher edge really. I'm just going to give it a more interesting composition. I'm going to come in from this side. I'm going to take a few sort of brambly bits through. It's still really nice and wet. You'll have noticed that I dabbed my brush off before I came into this so that I start to get some thicker lines. So I haven't got too much water on there. Rinse that brush off, dab it off. I'm going to come into some ultramarine blue. To get a nice dark blue. Just creating a bit more depth and detail into this foreground area. Rinse that off. Right, so what I'm going to do now is use some Chinese white. Now Chinese white is opaque, so all the other ones that I've used so far, burnt umber is semi-opaque, but Chinese white is opaque, so it's going to come in and over what we've already got. I'm going to hold, so it's fairly loaded. In fact, I can load up with a bit more water just to make sure, and I want nice, thick, creamy paint, so I'm going to keep working it, and I want that brush to be fully loaded. Then I'm going to come really low onto my finger and hit. So this is called throwing paint. And it's splattering randomly. And I can bring in some bigger ones, so it just indicating sort of seed heads and flowers in there. If you do it with the brush and do all of them with the brush, then it doesn't look random enough, so you're better to do it a bit of both. and get a really nice effect. So you've got that darkness, the light of the green behind. If I just, with my round number 6 now, it's still really wet, so I'm just going to make sure I've got plenty of this darker green, which is the Viridian and Burnt Umber. Then I can just come through with a few bits of that as well, just before I dry this off, because every time you come back on and it's a little bit drier, you're getting a little bit more depth. So you'll have the really soft edges and then these working in as well. You see it's not moving as much. Okay, so I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so what you must really do now is make sure that's really nice and dry, and for it to feel dry it should feel warm to the touch, and it should be pretty much flat again. Otherwise you're just going to end up lifting the paint. So what I'm going to teach you now is quite an advanced technique, but it's one that will improve your work, and gradually over time it will get better. So I'm going to come on with a bit of water just over this top half. I'm being very gentle. You could use a water spritzer. If you are using a wood pulp paper, then I would suggest using a water spritzer to do this, because it will lift. But with the cotton paper it tends not to lift as long as it's totally dry. So that's the water I've taken on with my round number 10. I'm going to bring in a couple of trees. Now we've done these types of trees before plenty of times in videos. These are soft trees, wet in wet trees. So this is the Viridian green and the Burnt Umber, and I'm getting it nice and thick. And I have got my round number 6, and then what I'm going to do is come in and create the tree. And I'm coming down to the line where the grass is. So I'm creating an edge here, a harder edge. So I've got a more defined field. You want to vary the height of those trees. And it's just a dabbing action, keeping your brush quite upright, and you'll get that nice softness. If it flows too far, then your paint is a little bit too wet, and you need to make sure it's nice and creamy. I want you to just bring it down in a couple of places. This is so I can show you a technique called lost and found edges. Now books tell you all about this, but it's very hard to understand what to do. So if I pick up my round number 10, make sure I've got totally clean water, and I'm just going to take a little bit off on my hand. Can you see I'm taking a little bit off? I don't want it to be soaking wet. And what I'm going to do is touch the paint in places and miss others. As I'm going along, I am pushing the brush down so that I wet further than the paint needs to go. So it's got somewhere to run if it needs to run. If you need to re-wet your brush, just do that and then dab a little bit off on your hand, and you're going to come along. I'm not moving the paint, I'm just touching the paint and I'm pushing down. You can see that how much I'm pushing down on the brush. And what that creates is the technique called lost and found edges. So you can see here that I've lost an edge, it's blended in, and I've found an edge because I've missed part of it, so I've gained another bit. This is what lost and found edges are. It's quite an advanced technique because it's learning that you don't move the paint. You just very literally touch the paint with the end of the brush and push down. Also, if the brush is too wet and you don't dab off, then there's a risk of that water running in and watermarking what's above. Sometimes when it's very wet, it runs quite a lot down here, so you can just come along and just pull some of that back out. But it's really good for adding shadows and grounding an area, and it works really nicely as random. Okay, so I'll dry that one off. Okay, so just a couple of bits to do now. So I've got a little bit of a watermark here. I'm going to take some more water onto it, so it's totally dry now, and I'm going to make it into a cloud. Sometimes things have to evolve, and this is one of those times. I think try not to get a set idea in your head of how you want a picture to turn out, and then it will always work. So you can see how I lifted out just a random shape here. So it's nothing, I didn't just stick to the watermark. I've made a random cloud shape, and there's just enough, I'm dabbing off with kitchen towel, for that to soften that in and for that to work. Often when something is dry, it's very easy to then fix the problem. So that's just taken that water. It's just basically when I've gone along with the water, I've just left a dirty mark in a place and it needed to come off. So that's worked nicely. I'm going to come down to my rigger now, and I just want to add a little bit of detail. It's already looking really pretty, and I don't want to go over the top. So if I just bring in with this green a few little bits, nothing too much. Take a few bits into this corner as well. It's just giving it a little bit more depth. And then if I wet my round number 10, and we're going to load again with that white. So this white this time is going to come on to dry. Nice creamy consistency, so keep working it. Then hold your finger. You're just going to take a few splatters on. You see those little bits appearing. If it goes too high, dab it off. The rest of it's dry, so you can just dab off. Okay, so I'll dry that off and take the tape off. There we go, so it's all drying the tapes off. So it's a really nice introduction into how to go really loose and how to create those lost and found edges. Also shows you how to correct a watermark in a good way. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Please do like, subscribe and share. I'll pop you another playlist here and a video just here, and I'll see you next time. Okay, so I'm going to do a nice simple landscape. I've got a little postcard size of Bockingford watercolour paper today and some Cotman pan paints that I'm going to use direct from the pan. I've got two brushes, a round number 10 and a round number 6, and this is all I'm going to use. There's no drawing, we're going to go straight on. It's nice and simple for a beginner. So I'm coming on with some water. I'm going to pop water on the sky. So a nice straight horizon and plenty of water onto that sky with my round number 10. I'm going to come into some ultramarine blue. So in a really nice circular motion, I'm still using my round number 10. I'm just going to keep pushing down and doing a little circle on the paper. That's going to give me a really nice cloudy effect to the sky. Because we're working on a small piece of paper, it gives you plenty of time for you to get used to how the watercolours work. I'm going to rinse that brush out. I've got a bit of kitchen towel here. I'm just going to dab it off a little bit, and I'm going to come into some cadmium red. I'm just going to take a little bit of that in. Now you will need to wiggle your brush around to blend that through. You're going to get like a really nice muted purple. That's going to give us some really nice cloud effects. Now I have preserved some of the white of the paper, but what I can do is I can take this kitchen towel, scrunch it up and take a little bit more out. So as I'm dabbing, I am twisting mid-air to ensure that I get a different dab every single time. I don't want it to be a pattern, so by moving around when I'm dabbing, it means it's not going to become a pattern. So I can lift out, keep changing the bit of kitchen towel because I don't want it to be dirty. I can lift out and then I can have a combination of hard and soft edges in my cloud. Can lift out some little bits. And it's nice because you can have that combination. You've got those few hard edges, that lovely soft edge there, that lovely soft edge there still. I don't want you to come too far down with the clouds because I'm going to put a tree line on. So I've swapped down to my round number 6 now, and I've popped some water on it. And I've got 2 greens here, but basically you want to have a green, whatever one you've got. This is Viridian, so this is really, really bright. And what I'm going to do is just take some of that just into an area to mix. And then I'm going to take some dark brown into it. So this is burnt umber, and that's going to make it look more of a natural green. The Viridian is very, very emerald, so you want it to look much more natural. So that's loaded onto my brush, and I'm just going to dab in. This is a round number 6, and I'm going to create a tree line. So I'm keeping that brush quite upright and dabbing, and I'm going to vary the height of these trees. The paper's still wet with the paint, so this is going to blend nicely and give a softness, but because I haven't got much water on the brush and the paint is thick, it's not going to move too far. So it's a really nice way to get distant trees. You can have a little bit of a gap in places. You're just going to come along, dabbing in and creating a distant tree line. And rinse that brush off. I'm going to come back now to my round number 10, and I'm going to come in with some water. I'm going to leave about ½ centimetre gap between the wet paper up there and the dry down here. So I've got a little dry line. That's going to stop them running together. I don't want them to run together. So that's got plenty of water on. I'm still working with my round number 10, and now I want to get some colour into the foreground. So I'm going to use first of all this warm yellow. Any yellow will do. It's just about using what you've got. Horizontal stroke, and I'm sweeping that forward. So I'm going to get some nice freshness and warmth in that front section. I'm dipping in now to a sap green. So this is more of a grass type green. I'm bringing that through as well. So you need a little bit of water on your brush to be able to work the colour. With some pans you have to work quite hard to get the colour to move off onto the brush. So horizontal strokes. I'm going to bring this green through this yellow as well. So I've got a little bit of warmth happening in the foreground. It's going to bring that forward. I'm going to dip into the burnt umber now. This is the mucky brown basically. I'm going to stroke that through to create some shadow. Horizontal strokes, varying the pressure of the brush. I don't want it to appear the same everywhere. And that's giving it a nice sense of shadow. I'm going to swap down now to my number 6. This is all still quite wet. I'm going to pop something in the foreground now. So if I come back into the green, I'm going to really work it. So I've dabbed the brush into water. This is the sap green again, and I want a nice thick consistency. That thick consistency then will stay put in the wet. So I'm going to start to bring in some grasses into the foreground. Now if you wanted to use a thinner brush, you could do. I'm keeping it nice and simple and just using 2 brushes. So you're getting used to those brushes and to the paint. I rest on my little finger and then I'm flicking upwards. You want to vary the height, vary the thickness so that it doesn't look like freshly mown grass, it's more wild grass. And then if I come into the blue, I've not really rinsed my brush in between. Just make sure your brush isn't too wet. You can just bring in a bit stronger colour and that will help it bring it forward as well. If in doubt when you're doing something like this and you think it might have a bit too much water on, then just dab it off a little bit on the kitchen towel. Okay, so I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry now. What I'm going to do is come in and just create a little bit more definition, because this was all wet in wet and we can now come on wet on dry. So this is with the round number 6 again, and I'm coming into the sap green, and I can just really build up these strokes of grass just to give it more definition in the foreground. If you dip a little bit into the ultramarine blue, I might need a tiny bit of water. You build up some more grasses. So we've got the soft ones behind, the harder ones in front. Remember to vary the height, dipping into the ultramarine blue, tiny bits of water. And that's really building that up lovely. If it goes a little bit scratchy, it's what I call scratchy, then you need a little bit more water on your brush. If it cakes and it doesn't flow, you want a little bit more water. Rinse my brush off and dab it off a little bit. I don't want too much water on when I'm doing this. I'm going to come back into the sap green. So what I've got here is tiny watermarks. So when I was drying it off, my brush dripped a little bit of water on. These things happen, and then there's ways and means to cover it up. So what I'm going to do is add a little bit of extra definition. So this is a little bit of the sap green that I'm painting through. I'm going to rinse my brush in some clean water. Then I'm just going to touch underneath so that that softens in a little bit. So it's giving me an extra level of detail in here. And then again with a little bit of sap green, because I didn't get this area at the back and this is still white, I can just very lightly with a light wash, so plenty of water and then a tiny dab of paint come through that white area, and again it's giving another sense of another level there, a bit more shadow. In fact, I can pop a little bit in here as well. That really does then break up that area quite a lot. So this is just again a wet brush and dabbing in. That's not really nice and simple, but I could add a few splatters for flowers as well. So if I pick up my round number 10 and I'm just going to wet just along this area here, so just dabbing in. Then with my round number 6 I'm going to stay with the same colour yellow that we used earlier, so dipping into water and plenty of the yellow. Then if I hold my finger out close to my work, I can just do a few little splatters. You do have to watch your sky. You can always cover your sky up. If you're pretty quick, you can just dab it off anyway from that top area, but it just gives an extra little bit of detail and it's quite fun to do. It's much better to have random than to just dot on. The more you dot on, the more that it looks like a pattern. Okay, I'll dry that one off. So there we go, that's all finished. I've taken the tape off. So a really nice simple landscape which is showing you wet in wet sky, how to create clouds, both soft clouds and lifted out hard clouds, how to do wet in wet distant trees, the wet wash of the field, some splattering, some wet on dry for building up the texture in the grasses. So a lovely simple landscape watercolour for you. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please do like, subscribe and share. If you'd like to see another one, I'll pop you one just here for you to link into. And please have a look at my playlist as well for the Total Beginners series. See you next time.
So if you've made it this far, you must have enjoyed it. What I'd like to know from you, if you pop in the comments for me, is if you really enjoyed doing a few together, and if you'd like me to group some together for different subjects, say you like flowers or seascapes or trees. So do let me know in the comments.